Good morning, everyone. I'm Brenda Chen, the Senior Director of Solutions Architecture at AppsFlyer, and today we'll be talking about the cross-platform opportunity with mobile apps, specifically with CTV. We'll talk through the cross-platform vision, and then we'll dive into CTV, why now, and some of the offerings. And then we'll talk about the CTV to mobile flow, specifically as it pertains to how measurement works. So cross-platform. This might seem obvious, but no matter where your business lives, how you engage with users are across these different platforms. Currently in the US household, there's about 22 connected devices, and so how your brand engages with your users is through these different devices. And while that opportunity is there, it's important to be able to measure everything across these devices so that you can see the full picture and understand where your users are coming from so that you can optimize towards those engagements. And so specifically with CTV and AppsFlyer, we're able to support these cross-platforms ranging from CTV, console, tablet, desktop, PC, and mobile. Today, we'll specifically talk through the CTV to mobile flows. And just to level set here, CTV is connected TV. So it's any TV with internet connection that has a streaming stick or a console or a box or a smart TV. So why now? In the last couple years, the accessibility of internet and the lower reduced cost of internet has changed user behaviors to increase their usage across apps, devices, and services. And due to this shift, CTV has also increased over the years. And so here you can see 9 out of 10 US households have CTV devices. And due to this, in the last year, we've seen a growth in ad spend around 60%, and that's only going to continue in the coming years. Beyond the market, consumer behaviors have also changed as well. More than half the users are on multiple devices at the same time. So think about when you're watching Netflix. You or your partner are probably on your device, on your mobile device, searching things and buying things at the same time. And so that has also led to behavior changes where people are comfortable downloading apps from a CTV ad, as well as scanning a QR code. So you think about the famous Coinbase commercial for Super Bowl with the bouncing QR codes. That's indicative of users' behaviors changing and being comfortable scanning QR codes. In North America specifically, that behavior has changed post-COVID. As you all know, now people are comfortable scanning QR codes and scanning them at restaurants to pull out the menu. And that's something that's significantly changed in North America more recently so. Whereas APAC, for example, that's always been the case. They've been heavy QR code users. But now locally in the US, that behavior has changed. And where there are viewers, there are also advertisers. So the number of CTV partners have also increased. More and more digital ad networks are providing CTV inventory. And then there's also ad networks like TV Scientific and Vibe that are specifically focused on CTV. And now there's the inventory side of things. Historically, CTV has less inventory than traditional TV. However, in the last few years, there's more and more services popping up, and also these large streaming giants such as Netflix and Disney are offering an ad-supported tier. And this will only increase CTV inventory to compete against the traditional inventory. And we're seeing this shift more and more from linear TV over to CTV, and linear TV has been more brand-focused and focusing on more high-level metrics. And whereas CTV is a little bit more on the performance marketing side, and we'll talk through that a little bit more. But the barrier of entry to get into CTV is significantly lower than linear TV. When you ran campaigns through linear TV, it required a lot of upfront commitment and investment. But now on the CTV side, you can start with a few $1,000s. And measurability has changed as well. As I discussed earlier, on the linear TV side, it's been more focused on brand. So a lot of the metrics that you're looking at is specifically frequency and reach. So it's very limited. However, with the introduction of CTV, it has more of a performance marketing angle. So you can see all of the metrics that you're comfortable with on the performance marketing side, such as LTV, in-app events, all of those user level data tied back to the CTV campaign. Additionally, you can see all of that in one view. So if your attribution provider supports this, you'll be able to see all the campaigns you're running for apps within the app ecosystem. But if you're starting to look at cross-device and cross-platform, you can also see that across CTV and console and PC and whatnot. So all of that kind of comes together with using an attribution provider that allows you to see all this data. On the CTV side, there's also more precise targeting. So you can target with geolocation, demographics, platform targeting. So you can target across Roku or Apple TV or Xbox. There's also contextual targeting and OTT channel targeting. So let's say you're a finance app. It might make sense for you to run campaigns through, let's say, the news channel rather than your kids' channel. And then also first, second, third-party data layers. If you're familiar with the mobile ecosystem, things have changed in the last few years where identifiers have been opt-in now. And so it's been shifting a little bit in the sense of utilizing user-level data to optimize your users. However, on the CTV side, you're still able to use that first-party data and reach your audience. And then also you can complement that data set with second and third parties platforms so that you can create lookalikes as well. There's also multiple creative formats. So there's the in-stream video ad, so that's your typical traditional TV commercial breaks where you see videos. But there's also interactive ads and display ads. It adds a level of clickability that is more performance marketing focused, right? So for example, interactive ads, you might have a QR code or a link that you have to click, and you'll be able to be redirected somewhere. And with that, it gives, again, more of the performance marketing metrics. So these ads, for example, will also be supported potentially with your ad networks more on the CPI and CPA basis rather than CPM. So a little bit more of that performance marketing angle. Now that we've talked through CTV and what's offered, let's also talk about the CTV to mobile flows and how the attribution actually works so that you can measure your campaigns effectively. So how does it work? If you think about the old traditional TV, a lot of that is through DMA. So it's really general and you can't really understand where the users are coming from. However, now we're able to measure the CTV campaign conversions at the household level. So that's a lot more precise in terms of attribution. How it works is if you're a user watching TV and you see an ad, there's an impression that gets fired to AppsFlyer, so you're able to use that and perform attribution on that. If that user ends up downloading, installing the app, and performing events, all of that will get tied back to the CTV campaign. Another use case is multi-touch attribution. Let's say you see the same campaign on the CTV ad, but then the doorbell rings because you got your food delivery for dinner. Let's say you forget to download the app and then you're perusing Facebook and then you see the ad. At that point, you click, download, and launch and install the app and do all the events. And all of those events will be tied back to the Facebook ad since that's the most recent engagement. However, you can go one level deeper and go back upstream and understand that this user also engaged with this CTV ad. So this gives you that level of visibility. Lastly, there's also the CTV ad with QR code scanning, so very similar to what we discussed with Coinbase. Let's say there's a QR code, that user scans it, downloads, launches the app, all of that LTV will get tied back to this QR code CTV campaign. Everything we discussed here is more at AppsFlyer on the attribution platform. So with mobile apps, CTV, console gaming, cross-platform, that is sort of the bread and butter and the foundation. On top of that, we have a privacy cloud solution, which is a data layer that allows you to exchange data with other third-party vendors so that you can optimize your data and be able to glean insights from that in a very privacy-centric way. Lastly, there are apps that sit on top of that. So think about fraud detection, engagement with your users through deep linking, audiences and incrementality, and of course reporting. All of that sits on top of these layers and gives you the ability to glean insights as well as interact and engage with your user experiences. With that, that's enough from me today. I'd love to bring to the stage Gregory Pang, Director of User Acquisition from Mistplay, and Leslie Lacayo, Senior Manager of Performance Marketing at Step, to give their perspective from the advertiser side. I guess so. Before we get started, I'd love to hear a little bit about yourself. So what's your role? What do you do? Talk about your business and what the main goals are.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Nice to meet you, see you guys. My name is Greg Pang, Director of User Acquisition at Mistplay. Mistplay is a loyalty-driven, loyalty-based app for mobile gamers. So we have a ecosystem of millions of gamers. They come to Mistplay to play games, discover new games, and they get rewarded for those games. So we kind of have two layers of how we think about performance, because not only are we optimizing towards our own performance KPIs, we also act as a media source for other UA buyers. So we look at our own Mistplay ROAS, our own LTV to CAC. We also consider our clients' LTV to CAC. So those are our two main priority KPIs amongst some of those other secondary or tertiary ones. So,
hi everyone, I'm Leslie. So I run performance marketing efforts for Step. It's a mobile banking platform for Gen Z. The main KPIs that I look at are our signups, transacting users, the costs associated with that. My goal is really to bring in new users into our funnel, mainly Gen Z users, sometimes their parents, in order for them to unlock their kids' accounts. Step really is a platform to improve the financial future for the next generation. Gen Z can build credit history before they're 18. They can invest, they can save, earn rewards all in one place. We just launched the ability to earn 5% on their savings. And then one big important part for us is making sure that the quality of the users that we acquire are strong. So looking at the LTV of those users, the CAC to LTV ratio as well, and analyzing that by channel that we acquire users through.
Great. And now let's talk a little bit about CTV. So I know you both are relatively new into the CTV space. So can you tell me a little bit about when you got into CTV and why?
Yeah, absolutely. As we all know, performance-based CTV buying is relatively new to the mobile space. So as soon as I would say the MMPs and a lot of the services out there figured out the attribution piece, as you went over in your presentation, that's really when we were super excited and jumped on, let's call it the CTV bandwagon, right? As we all know, CTV's been around for a long time on the website, but it hasn't really been in the tool set of a direct response performance marketer. About 8 months ago, when AppsFlyer came out with their measurement attribution product on the CTV side, is essentially when we started, and we've seen some really positive pockets of performance as it relates to backing into a ROAS goal or an LTV to CAC goal, right? And so, we're super excited. We see it as a huge opportunity. Obviously, the stat was that 9 out of 10 households have a CTV or an OTT streaming device. That reach is massive and is a definite opportunity for us moving forward.
Yeah, so for us, we ran a brief test earlier this year. We saw CTV as an excellent way to speak to parents. As we all know, parents watch a lot of TV. Gen Z is mostly on social media these days, TikTok and whatnot. So, and we weren't really talking to parents, so we saw this as a big opportunity. And then to your point about, the CPI focused on CTV offering as of late is what kind of pushed us over the edge to test it out. Our efforts are really hyper-focused on direct response, lower funnel metrics when acquiring users. So that really helped out. We tested with AppLovin. It was a pretty good experience. We saw pretty good performance.
Great. And just to dive a little bit deeper into the great performance and the success, what were you looking at to be able to figure that piece out on your side?
Yeah, for us as a largely performance-driven organization, performance is always going to be king, and that main KPI is going to be, return on ad spend goal. For us operationally, it's going to be a little bit more short-term, right? A D7 or a D14 goal. So In terms of what we've been seeing from some of the partners that we've been testing, right? AppLevin, she's mentioned, as well as a lot of the CTV first partners that you also mentioned. We've been seeing some positive performance as it relates to our short-term ROAS targets.
For us, we looked at our usual metrics, just our cost per signups, cost per monthly transacting users, the conversion rates between those upper funnel and lower funnel metrics. And most importantly, we also looked at incrementality, making sure that the conversions that we were acquiring, or the new users that were coming in, weren't necessarily conversions that would have come in already organically. And we actually did see that. So it was a positive result with our test.
Great. And then with targeting, creatives are also really important and go hand in hand. And so as a smaller studio that does a smaller team, where you don't have all the resources to develop the content, it's a little bit more difficult. So we'd love to hear how both of your approaches differ when creating the creatives.
Yeah, so for us, that was actually a pretty big barrier to entry. We knew that we would require, net new resources to produce content for CTV. Being that our primary target audience is Gen Z, TikTok is one of our primary channels. A lot of our content is TikTok specific, TikTok centric. So when we worked with the AppLevin team, they actually helped us kind of repurpose some of those assets, repurpose some of the specs, added a few other elements, and we actually ran some of our TikTok creatives for our CTV test. Surprisingly and interestingly, they performed pretty well. So that actually was another big reason why we decided to test, kind of pushed us over the edge.
Yeah, our story is a little bit different in that we have a pretty robust creative team that is dedicated to building out highly produced, let's say, fully built out assets. And so we approached it as kind of a ready-made strategy for CTV. And we got a lot of the feedback from our CTV partners and people in the industry. With CTV being a little bit more of a longer format, we got the feedback that a little bit more of a premium style would help, a little bit heavier on the storytelling components as well. And so we really leaned into that. But that's not also to say that we don't test our mobile creatives as well. To Leslie's point, I think there is some positivity or some belief that UGC or non-CTV ads, premium ads, will also work. And so, yeah, for us, everything is on the table as far as testing, but we've found some success with some of those highly more produced CTV first ads.
Great, that's interesting. And so there's a lot of different components that come into play when you're running these campaigns. And so having a scalable testing strategy and being able to measure that success is important. And so I guess, how do you measure that success and optimize, and how does it differ with CTV versus mobile apps?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say still some of the targeting capability on CTV is limited versus what you see on like a DSP or you see on a direct SDK network. For us, there's two main targeting components that we're utilizing and optimizing towards. It's going to be at the audience behavioral level. Some CTV partners that we've worked with have that ability to, let's say, target millennials or target adventure gaming audiences, right? And so we could optimize towards those as far as what's working in market comparative to our KPI targets. Other than that, she mentioned the AppLevin product. They also give you the ability to bid or target based on site IDs or inventory sources. So we have that level of control in order to, let's say, bid higher into an MTV or a Pluto TV or whatever inventory source is going to work for your business, right?
Yeah, so ours was a little bit different. We kind of did a blanket approach, geo-based targeting. We were open to, seeing if we were actually going to acquire those parent users that we were trying to go after, but we're also open to bringing in, a solo adult or a teen. So in the end, we actually did see a majority of parents come in. Naturally, our ads resonated with the parent audience. It spoke to them. It spoke to their child's financial needs, and so we saw the type of user that we were trying to go after come in through our funnel. So I think our creatives, nowadays you hear a lot about creatives doing the targeting for you. I think that played a big part with the test that we ran.
And I think also, just to add to that, the scalability piece has been a bit of a challenge for us. The actual inventory and the traffic that we are able to buy has actually been largely positive for us. But we haven't been able to scale to the level, let's say, that we necessarily want to in the short term. I think long term it will get there as, let's say, more supply, more inventory comes online. People are a little bit more ready, or the user behavior is there to convert through CTV, right? You talked about QR codes earlier. And so for us, it's been positive, but we just want more of that traffic in the long term. And I think it will get there eventually.
Got it. So you're just waiting a little bit for the ecosystem to
mature. I mean, to be honest, we are still pretty early, right? From the technology standpoint, attribution, and from just the user behavior standpoint. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so while we wrap up, I have a question for you, Leslie. So what advice or strategies you'd share with the audience if they're just starting to get into CTV?
Yeah, so for me, I started off this year. I spoke to a lot of providers. To be honest, it was a little bit overwhelming just to see the amount of different offering and all the different companies that are now offering CTV. So we went through a pretty extensive vetting process. And I think what it came down to is making sure that it aligned to our strategy. The CPI versus CPM based billing and performance-based approach really helped us make our decision, as well as the creative part that played a significant component in our decision. We have a small design team, so the fact that we were able to get help with our resources there, that really helped quite a bit. So do your research, just make sure that it fits into your strategy, and if you have a small team like mine, getting support from your partner definitely plays a big part.
Thank you, Leslie. And the last question's for you, Greg. So where do you see the CTV future holding? You talked about it a little bit on the scalability side, but where do you see that going, and how do you think CTV can eventually be part of a typical app marketing strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I don't think anybody has a crystal ball, and I can't tell you what's going to happen in 6 to 8 months, but there's been a lot of excitement around CTV and the attribution piece. There's been a lot of excitement with initial testing that we've gotten off the ground in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 months. If you look at the landscape, there's a lot of partners out there, going CTV first, but there's also a lot of, let's say, DSPs and a lot of partners adding to their product lines, right? Adding to buying into the CTV exchanges. And so I think that's an indication that it's not going anywhere, and it's going to be a large part of the ecosystem. How large that becomes over time, I can't tell you. But I will say, to put a hard number on it, we're probably investing anywhere from 1 to 5% of our total investment in CTV. We would hope to project that to maybe upwards of 10 to 15 by the end of the year, obviously if performance holds. So if that's, again, any indication, it's a pretty big chunk of our media spend. So I think it's here to stay. Where it will evolve to and how measurement will get better and how user behavior will adapt still remains to be seen, but it's a super exciting time.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Leslie and Gregory, for today. Appreciate the time and this great conversation. Hopefully it was helpful for everyone else. And just to wrap up, we've talked a little bit about CTV today, but we also do cross-platform with console and PC. So feel free to swing by our booth and with AppsFlyer, and we're happy to talk to you. But thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.